What's up, RotoGrinders? Happy Monday, Happy New Year. We got some NFL football here on Monday, January 2nd. My name is TJ Zwarych. We're going to help you take down some money on tonight's showdown slate, but I'm not going to do it alone. I am joined by Keith Eyster. How you doing, Keith?
Doing good, man. Happy New Year. Have a really fun football game to break down here tonight. Best one of the week. So love it when the great games are on the islands and we get to play the full showdown for it. Nice 50-point total here. So this one looks good.
Yeah, I'm excited. We've had so many just duds for showdown slates this year. So many primetime games with backup quarterbacks, third-string quarterbacks, starting quarterbacks on terrible teams. And so it's exciting to finally have a huge game like this one. Cincinnati Bengals, Buffalo Bills. You can't imagine a better matchup without maybe including the Chiefs in there, but two of the top three teams without a doubt that you want to see in action on a primetime slate. If you have
Definitely
any
matters
questions,
for the playoff seeding as well. So both of these teams are second and third. It matters for the top of those AFC playoff seeds. So definitely a game that means something, which is nice this time of year.
big time. Matters for real life football, matters for standings, matters for DFS as well. And hopefully we're going to take something down. If you have any questions, you can get them in the YouTube chat, or premium members can head over to the RG Discord and you can go in the live stream chat, and we are going to be taking questions in there as well. Make sure you're hitting the like button if you're watching us on YouTube. Follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Make sure you hit the notification bell. Keith, you got any bets for tonight? Because, the people sometimes don't just want to play DFS. They want to bet too. And, we got you covered at Scores and Odds, your number one place for all things sports betting. You can check it out for everything you need to make you a better sports bettor, including our Parlay IQ tool, FanDuel Sportsbook integration, build your optimal same-game parlay based on thousands of games worth of data. With a click of a button, you can take that bet slip directly to the FanDuel Sportsbook. You making some parlays? You just making a couple one-off bets? What's this game look like for you?
A couple straight bets for me. Didn't put in any parlays, but I do like the passing attack in this game. Both teams are top 10 in pass rate, both throwing it around 65% of the time. So I like some receiving over props here. Jamar Chase sitting at 82.5. That one looks pretty good to me. And where was Diggs at? Diggs at 76.5. So I like the top two receivers here. Both of them feel pretty good. Feel like we get a little back and forth shootout action. I like the receiving props.
Love it. I agree with you. I think this is going to be a big shootout game, and we're going to build some of these lineups on DFS for how we think this is going to go. We're going to build you an optimal on DraftKings as well as FanDuel. But I got to admit, I'm making one lineup on FanDuel today, and it's hard. It's really hard. I found it a little bit easier to get the players I want to get in, making things over on DraftKings here, but I do think it's very difficult on FanDuel. I'm on the same page as you here. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. It's a shootout. We got a 49.5 point total, 2.5 point spread. Cincy at home, like this has all the makings of a shootout. Starting over here on DraftKings, we'll talk optimally first. Looking at the captain position. Is it if we're going optimal, is it a Josh Allen day? It kind of feels like it has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. He offers the rushing floor, which is so I think there's a little bit more safety with him than with Burrow. He certainly can run a touchdown in as well as throwing for 3 or 4 of them. Most expensive guy on the slate, but absolutely, I think he's the optimal captain.
Love it. It's kind of difficult to argue against him in optimal settings today. If you are wanting to differentiate in tournaments, Joe Burrow feels like the best way to do so for me. Just the fact that he's coming in at half the ownership, even less than Jamar Chase, feels awesome to me. You mentioned this, and we'll touch on more of it when we get to the flex position, but on DraftKings, where their prices are so tight, it feels weird how similar within 10%, within 5% T. Higgins and Jamar Chase's ownership is. It feels like Jamar should be a lot higher owned than T. Higgins is, whereas on FanDuel, that price tag is a lot better for T. But we'll dive into that a little bit more later. There's a lot of these guys in the 10 to 15% range of captain ownership today. if you're in a large field, you are trying to get different today. Who's your favorite route? Because outside of Joe Burrow, most of mine actually aren't in this 5 to 10% tier. I'd rather just go way off the board, like with somebody like Gabe Davis, Devin Singletary, maybe even James Cook.
I love the Gabe Davis call. I'm certainly going to have plenty of Stephon Diggs. I think he certainly has the most upside, but we've seen Gabe Davis pop off for really big games at times. We mentioned the pass rate of the Bills. They throw it around a ton. So I'm primarily targeting pass catchers. I like the Burrow call as well. I think he's a little bit under-owned with Allen picking up all of that ownership. So I like going to Burrow too. But the pass catchers are where I'm going to have the most of my exposure. The Gabe Davis ownership looks great. I agree. Like the Higgins and Chase thing is interesting. Like Chase has clearly separated himself this year in terms of like a target market share. He's up at like 28% and Higgins is down at like 19%. I think it was. So Chase feels a little bit safer. I think they both have incredible ceilings in this game. But I agree. I would be clicking on Chase if this ownership is similar, like we have it projected. I would definitely prefer Chase over Higgins.
It just feels so weird to have the difference in ownership percentage basically being identical to the difference in projection. Like almost 4 points higher for Jamar Chase, a little less than 5% ownership difference between the two of them. That just feels crazy with how close they are together in price. If we move to the flex position here from our optimal standpoint, we got Josh Allen in here. To me, this feels like a day that you have to go 2 QBs. Like, I don't know about you, but like it feels like to me that with a high scoring game like this one, unless you're building a script with a running back in your captain position, it's going to be difficult for me not to play both of the QBs in this lineup.
Yeah, I certainly prefer the passing games here. So I'm pretty much going to be fading most running backs. And we'll get into the running back conversation in a little bit, but both of these backfields are kind of trending towards being more of a timeshare than they have as the season goes on. Like we've seen the backups pick up more work in P. Ryan and James Cook for the Bills. So I'm definitely leaning heavy pass script here as well. Love both quarterbacks.
And that's the thing that I do like about kind of both of these Buffalo running backs is I do think they'll both kind of be heavily involved in the passing games, probably Cook more so than Singletary, but Singletary's been getting pass down work lately as well. And so I do kind of like both of those players. However, who do we want to look for as the next plug and play in this lineup? We're obviously decided that we like Chase for that price and ownership difference over Higgins here. So the conversation then becomes not Higgins or Chase, but Chase or Diggs. Because if we plug in one of these guys here, 3,800, just over that for the rest of our positions, it becomes really tough to fill in the rest of our lineups. Now, sure, we do have the inexpensive players on the slate to do it with, like Hayden Hurst, Isaiah McKenzie, two players who are projecting very well and who are inexpensive that would fit this type of lineup. Are you feeling like it's a plug-in Chase or Diggs and then salary save, or are you trying to stick in the mid-tier with your next four?
Yeah, I think I want to get one of those big pass catchers in there. Higgins being priced up so close to Chase, it feels to me like Chase is just the guy that we go to here. That means we have to forego Diggs, and with Allen being our captain, that's maybe not ideal, but we have some cheaper options for Bills pass catchers that we can certainly get in here.
We're fading Diggs and we have Chase in the lineup. I think that means to me for salary saving options, the first player we have to plug in is a $2,800 Isaiah McKenzie. 25% ownership, just under 8 projected points, and at 2.8K, that's just a phenomenal value. It leaves you $4,350 for these last two positions. You get a choice of doing two different things. You can go full punt with a guy like Khalil Shakir or Naheem Hines, or you can stick in this low range with a 3K range with a guy like Hayden Hurst to allow you to pay up for someone in the 5K after that, or you can stick with the kickers, stick with the defenses. I don't think any of those are poor options. My favorite route, I think personally, is maybe to go with a guy like Hayden Hurst and then add in a second pass catcher with Isaiah McKenzie to pair with Josh Allen. But leaving those two positions to go, it allows you the flexibility to kind of do whatever you want, and it builds us a great core here. We have so much time today before we pivot over to FanDuel, because we got the 8:30 start today. It's a little unusual. Hasn't happened this year. We got some time.
Usually 8:15, 8:20. So yeah, definitely some extra time here today.
We talked about liking Gabe Davis's low ownership at the captain position. Why don't we look at the idea of building a contrarian Gabe Davis in the captain position lineup here? We still have our Josh Allen and our Joe Burrow. And then we talked about liking Jamar Chase. We would probably look like at a Diggs fade here as well if we have Davis in the captain position. And so here with this, it still kind of allows us, with the likes of McKenzie and Hurst and the defenses, the kickers, Shakir, it still allows for a good lineup for you to fill in here with all the different players sub 4K. But Gabe Davis at that captain position, that is going to make for some very contrarian lineups.
Yeah, so you talked about the tight pricing on FanDuel. I think it's actually pretty reasonable on DraftKings. You can fit in a number of these studs. Like this lineup we're looking at right here, like there's 3 studs for sure, and we've certainly seen Gabe Davis with the big ceiling before. Hasn't hit it quite as often recently, but certainly could do it in this game environment. So yeah, the pricing on DraftKings gets very doable, especially if you go with somebody other than a quarterback or Chase and Diggs at the captain. One guy I want to talk about a little bit is Dawson Knox. Like we've seen his role really recently pick up quite a bit. He's found the end zone in each of the last 3 games. I like his price tag at 4,800. You mentioned Hayden Hurst at 3K. He's coming back from injury. I like him as well, but I definitely want to make sure I'm getting in plenty of Dawson Knox in my build this for tonight.
Knox is probably my second value play today behind Isaiah McKenzie from a point per dollar standpoint, and from like a raw points just flex, he'd be one of the first players I'd want to get in my Josh Allen captain GPP lineups. Just as we're kind of fiddling here, I do want to see if somewhat interesting if it is possible to do the Josh Allen lineup with Burrow, Chase, Diggs all in the same lineup. Weirdly enough, I actually feel like you could do it with, and you'd pair like a Quinton Morris, Khalil Shakir, Reggie Gilliam. Hope there's some random touchdown passes to Josh Allen from Josh Allen in this one. I think it's somewhat doable. On DraftKings today, you can quite literally play whoever you want. We're going to save a bit more time for FanDuel than we usually do, which is lucky because we have a lot of time. But FanDuel is a much tougher build today, whereas DraftKings, you can kind of play whoever the heck you want. So we'll pivot here to FanDuel. Go through an optimal build, go through a contrarian build. Then we'll start getting to some QQs here as well.
Real quick, just touching on the Khalil Shakir play that you've mentioned a couple of times, $800. He ran just as many routes and played on the same number of snaps as Isaiah McKenzie did last week. He has played over 30% of the snaps in each of the last 2 weeks. So you don't typically get a guy that has an actual role for under $1,000 salary. So I like that play quite a bit. Just wanted to touch on that a little bit more.
With you. I like that one quite a bit as well. He's tempting to me on FanDuel as well, even though that specific price, his price isn't as valuable, $800. You know what I mean? It's crazy. Like from a point per dollar standpoint, it's nuts. With the way the salary cap is set up, it's technically not as valuable, but with how tight pricing is today on FanDuel, I really think it is. Like, full disclosure, the 2v2 I'm working on is, do I want to play Khalil Shakir and Dawson Knox, or do I want to play Samaje Perine and Isaiah McKenzie? And that's the thing that I'm struggling with right now. That's like my 2v2 struggle. But FanDuel, building a lineup here, optimally speaking, Josh Allen is still our MVP, especially when we don't have to worry about the salary multiplier like we do on DraftKings.
Yep, absolutely. I think that's a pretty easy decision.
We do have, before we talk about some contrarian guys here, we have a QQ in the live stream chat on Discord. Make sure if you have any questions, if you're in the Discord, go to that live stream chat. Or if you have any on YouTube, make sure you get them there as well. We got almost up to 150 people watching right now. Make sure you hit the like button. Let's get it up over 50 likes here. before we get to that game. I always like to get at least half, and that's close enough. So hopefully we can get there. Slide your finger over, hit that like button. Helps us out a whole lot, and it's real easy for you to do as well. QQ we had in the Discord live stream chat. How do we feel about running backs in the captain spot? You're not super high on it. I feel like you better have a very specific build if you're doing it. It's like a multi-enter type scenario for me, and I'm trying to build a contrarian lineup with that purpose.
So the only running back I have interest at captain is Joe Mixon. Like Singletary, I talked about the split a little bit. Let me just put those numbers down here real quick since we have some time. Singletary only played 56% of the snaps last week compared to James Cook's 44%. So it's pretty much an even split there. I have a hard time seeing Singletary put up the best score on the slate that you would typically need at your captain or MVP spot. He could do it if he scores twice, I suppose. But like Josh Allen just gets so much work around the goal line. I just don't think Singletary scores 2 touchdowns often enough for me to want to go there. Cook, kind of the same deal, just as the second piece of the split backfield, probably not seeing the ceiling there. And Mixon is losing snaps to Pirine as well, but Mixon does have that touchdown equity. Like we've seen Mixon score. He had a 4 touchdown game this year, I believe. Several games with multiple touchdowns. It's that touchdown equity for Mixon. He would be the one running back that I have interest in the captain spot.
Remind me to go through the running back heavy build that I had in mind after we go through the optimal one here, because I want to make sure people for their big lineups get their help in here. But I do think there's a somewhat viable way you could mix in a running back at captain, and it's not a likely game script by any means, but it fits a specific game script that logically could happen in football and nobody's going to be playing it. So remind me to get to that one as well before we go through it optimally here. But we got Josh Allen in the MVP position. Is this same as DK for you? Are we rolling double QB, Josh Allen, Joe Burrow?
Yes, I am on board with that. I feel like this is a passing game script. There's going to be a ton of passing. I could see each of these guys dropping back 40 times. So Burrow would be my first choice. Yep.
So equally not making sense to me is the T. Higgins and Jamar Chase ownership, because Jamar Chase was barely picking up anymore on DraftKings and their price was exactly the same, almost $800 difference. Here on FanDuel, where on a site where the pricing differences are very, very drastic. Here on FanDuel, tighter pricing pool, and there's a $2,500 difference between these two plays, and we're projecting only 3% ownership differences. T. Higgins to me is absolutely the next guy we're plugging into this lineup, even though it would make sense to have a Buffalo focus with Allen at the MVP position. He's still a guy who could run in some touchdowns, and this price for T. Higgins feels a little too good to pass up for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. The savings that you get off of Chase, I like both of them almost equally. I feel like Chase has the bigger ceiling, but where we need the savings here, I think it makes a ton of sense just to go down to Higgins. And you have Gabe Davis right there as well. Like Higgins is a better receiver than Gabe Davis. He obviously has big playability, but Higgins has a better target share, more touchdown equity. So love the T. Higgins call.
Now, with T. Higgins specifically, this is kind of a stand that I think you and I are going to be taking, because clearly the field is valuing them close together based on that ownership. But if you also look at this based on what the projections say to do, especially with Josh Allen at the MVP, not Joe Burrow at the MVP, it would make sense based on our projections here to roll Joe Mixon at that spot instead of T. Higgins. He's a better, according to the projections, point per dollar play. Third best one among the high-priced guys, third best one on the whole slate. But you and I both think this is going to be a heavy passing game. P. Ryan could be a little bit involved in the passing game. And I personally would rather go Higgins here. And I believe you're on the same page as Higgins over Joe Mixon, despite the projection difference.
I am, yes. As a flex play, I'm basically leading Joe Mixon entirely. We have seen him get more involved in the passing game recently, but that really wasn't his role all through the season. Like P. Ryan has been the pass catching back. I don't know if I buy the 2 weeks. Mixon is coming off 9 targets and he had 6 targets the week before. I feel like Pirine they go back to Pirine for that role. Pirine, we save quite a bit of money. You definitely don't want to play Mixon and Pirine in the same lineup, I don't think. So I agree. I like Higgins in this spot. And then I'm a big fan of Pirine on the slate, especially if Cincinnati gets behind. And we see Pirine have that pass catching role out of the backfield. I think that's quite a valuable role here. Certainly some risk that Mixon just holds it as he has the last 2 weeks, but I'm taking some shots on Pirine today for sure.
To me, your next spot, if we go, your lineup, your optimal lineup is determined by one or two things. Either you are going T. Higgins, Samaje Perine, and I'm not going to fill out the lineup, but with Allen at the captain, you can probably guess who the person who makes sense to fill in there is. But you're going Higgins and Perine because Perine, one, is a good point per dollar option for his salary on FanDuel. But two, if you don't have Mixon, that does correlate very well. It makes sense for your tournament lineups, your cash game lineups, everything. If you're not going that route, you don't want to play Perine, then it kind of does make sense to go Joe Mixon instead of T. Higgins, leaving you with $7,500 for either shots on a punt play down here, or you got Hayden Hurst, Isaiah McKenzie, you got the kickers in the 8K range as well. So to me, you're either going Higgins and Perine route, or you're going, and I mean, you could still play Isaiah McKenzie instead of Perine in one of the kickers. That wouldn't be the worst thing either. But to me, the optimal way to do it is you go Higgins, Perine, or Mixon and the Buffalo pass catcher. And I like Higgins, Perine better.
Yep, I'm with you on that. I think you broke that down excellently. Good stuff.
Couple QQs here, and then I will go through that contrarian running back heavy build that I was talking about earlier. Cole Beasley elevated from the practice squad for this game. Any value there? Do you have any interest in Cole Beasley?
I mean, I feel like they are going to use McKenzie, and now we've even seen Shakir mix in a little bit. I don't think that Beasley has enough of a role. Large field tournament, sure, you take a shot that maybe he mixes in a little more than we are expecting, but I kind of feel like they're going to test Shakir in that role a little bit more than Beasley. Beasley's there as insurance. They were dealing with a lot of injuries in the receiving core. But I feel like Shakir at this point in their career, like Beasley's at the tail end of his career, Shakir's their up and coming rookie. So I feel like Shakir is gonna be the one to cut into the slot role if anybody does.
100% agree with you there. If I'm choosing between the two, it's Shakir by a mile, especially on DraftKings where he's so cheap. But even on FanDuel, I'm still choosing Shakir. He's somebody that I'm considering in a single lineup scenario. Cole Beasley wouldn't ever be in consideration if I was running a single entry lineup. However, he is somebody that I would probably try and double, triple a field on if I was running 150, especially with that FanDuel price tag. If he's going to be 2% owned, if I have 150 lineups, I would have 4 to 6% Cole Beasley, but he's not somebody I would consider in a single entry type setting on this one. What about Trent Irwin as a punt on FanDuel?
I am interested in Trent Irwin. Obviously, he had the big game last week, but he was starting to have a little bit of a role even before Tyler Boyd went down with injury. Like you look at what he's done the last couple of weeks, and that's basically because of the Tyler Boyd injury. But I think he showed enough where he can still get a few routes here today. The price tag is right. Obviously, Tyler Boyd's going to be ahead of him, but I still think we could see him out there for 25% of the snaps or so. I don't mind him as a cheap value option.
For me, it's kind of, especially on FanDuel, choosing between him or Shakir as my favorite punt play. And I would just kind of like pairing it Irwin on my Burrow lineups and Shakir on my Josh Allen lineups. I have a 2v2 on FanDuel. Diggs and Hurst or Mixon and Gabe Davis. What's your preference there? I feel like you go.
I would be on the Diggs and Hurst side. I want to allocate my money to pass catchers in this game. I think I'm going to be far more exposed to Diggs than I will to Mixon.
I'm going to be on the Mixon Gabe Davis side just because I just feel like Davis and Mixon both have 20+ point upside, whereas it's just Diggs on the other side. I like Diggs best by a mile, but just the ability to get two of those plays over somebody like Hurst, I think gives the slight edge for me there.
Fair enough. I think both are great options.
Yeah, neither of them are bad by any means. What do you think about Wilcox as a value? Is he somebody that you think would be a nice contrarian play, or somebody you're not looking to touch with Hayden Hurst back?
Yeah, with Hayden Hurst back, I don't think I'm going there. 6 targets last week. I don't know. I feel like Hurst just stepped right back into his role, and Wilcox really didn't have much of a role while Hurst was out there. He might get a couple of targets, but I don't know. I feel like Hurst is the guy that they would to in the goal line situations also.
Another player like another player like Cole Beasley, who you don't play if you're running one lineup, but you probably try and get over the field on if you're running 150. He's probably more worth a shot on DraftKings, where he's a 1.8K as opposed to FanDuel, where there's some better guys in that range. Happy New Year, TJ and Keith from Carolina guy. Question from Doug here in the Discord. When doing multiple entries, which pass catchers would you want to be overweight on in the flex spots? I think that depends on the site, but the biggest guys on FanDuel, I'd be wanting to get overweight on their ownership extensively would be Gabe Davis at 15%, and then Trenton Irwin and Khalil Shakir coming in at 3% and 5% ish, respectively. These are two guys that I would want to be at least doubling, and Gabe Davis, I'd probably be in the 30% range as well. How about you?
Yeah, my answer is all of them, and I'm just leaning with a pass heavy build. I'm getting more exposure to all of the receivers and fading the majority of the running backs. I'll probably end up underweight on all 4 of the main running backs. But just for a couple of specific names, I agree. Gabe Davis, like, the price is just too good, the ceiling that he has with Josh Allen as his quarterback. And then I agree with the punt calls as well. Like, both of those guys are really in play. I like them to see the field, and they kind of just make everything else work. They allow you to pay up for the Jamar Chases and the Stephon Diggs. So all of them, but I agree Gabe Davis is the one I'll be most overweight on, and the punt plays as well.
Speaking of, Carolina guy is wondering who is our favorite contrarian FanDuel or favorite contrarian MVP for FanDuel. And Gabe Davis coming in at 1% is a guy that both of us kind of liked for that spot in a very contrarian setting. QQ for DraftKings GPP, you're running 3 lineups in deep fields. 2 of them, he wants to go with Jamar Chase and no T. Higgins. Are you good with that, or should he split them up in 1 and 1?
I'm good with taking a stand. I mean, it's entirely based upon your risk tolerance. But if it were my money and my lineups, I would certainly be okay taking the stand, just hoping that I get the Jamar Chase play correct. If Chase is the optimal captain, there's a good chance that Higgins is not doing enough to pay off his price. So I'd be totally fine taking a stand there.
It's like you said, it's all about risk tolerance, but it is the same stand that I would be looking to take with my money as well. To me, it's a T. Higgins day on FanDuel. It's a Jamar Chase day on DraftKings. And if it doesn't go well for me, it doesn't go well for me. Still got over 100 people watching. Make sure you hit that like button for us. Let's get it up over 50. Take your finger, take your little mouse, slide it over, smash the like button, caress it. Take your nose, tap it to the mouse to get it to work, whatever you want. If you're watching on your phone, you got to press the hide chat and then hit the like button. It's 2 steps instead of just 1. It's difficult, but I believe in you guys. I think we can absolutely get it done. Producer Devin in chat says he feels like he's seeing Allen captain lineups with a lot of salary saver Buffalo pieces. So he's going to have a lot of Allen captain lineups, single entry with Diggs. I'm kind of confused. I think I misread it. And so, but I mean, it's kind of the thing we're rolling with today. You play one of the top receivers and then you find your punts in there. Derek is going with, he's locking in the QBs at the flex position and playing none of them a captain on DraftKings. I do think that's a very interesting stand to take because they're going to be the 2 heaviest owned guys. Only lineup being run for trigger tweets is Tyler Bass at captain. What do you think?
A kicker in a game that has a 49.5 point total. You're rooting real hard for an under, I think.
Kickers to me are going to be exclusively last piece flex options for me today. Now, we were talking about contrarian MVPs on FanDuel. We were asked earlier in the show about playing the running backs at captain. I don't think I'd want to play a near 10% Joe Mixon at captain. I brought this up on the last Showdown show I was on with, I believe it was Tim over the weekend. I'm not a fan of playing suboptimal 10%, 5 to 10%ers in Showdown slates. I would much rather play the optimal quarterbacks who are projected for a ton of points and get different in my flex positions. Or if I'm going to get contrarian at captain, do it with somebody who's very low owned, not 5 to 10%, 1 to 3%. And my reasoning for that is if you're competing with 8, 9% of lineups, percent of lineups, you still have to get very contrarian to be different. You're still going to be duping a ton of lineups unless you're getting contrarian somewhere else. So I would rather just play the optimal version and get different somewhere else. Whereas if I'm competing against 1% of teams with that player in the captain lineup, all of a sudden I'm competing with a lot less people. I don't have to get all that contrarian. So if we're looking at a running back, I actually on FanDuel wouldn't even want to roll with Joe Mixon. Now, because he's so cheap, I don't mind him as a play there in general today. And if I was running 150, I would probably try and get at the field there. But the ones I'd want to get way over on are the 1 to 3%ers, because all I'd have to do is play them in 7 or 8 of 150 lineups, and I'm doubling the field. And so to me, what a lineup with Devin Singletary at the captain position today would look like is a ground and pound game where Buffalo's defense does well is not the most likely outcome. But if I want to play Singletary at the MVP position, I want to build for a game script that makes sense to me with Singletary at the MVP position. So I would play Josh Allen. I would play the Bills defense. And believe it or not, I think the last player I'd play here from the Buffalo side would be a good old, where is he? James Cook. Both running backs. Assuming that if Josh Allen is not my MVP, both of these running, or Tyler Bass. James Cook or Tyler Bass would be my last bill there. The reason I do that is I'm assuming if Josh Allen is not the MVP and Devin Singletary is, this is not the game script we're expecting. And maybe it's the running backs who score the touchdowns. Well, maybe the reasons why they're getting such easy touchdowns is because the Bills turn the Bengals over in their own zone, leading to a lot of quick red zone trips for Buffalo. Easy touchdowns for the running backs, not a lot of yards for the offense. That type of thing, correlating well together. It's a Buffalo beatdown where the defense plays well and both running backs get a ton of touches. If I was running this type of lineup, I'd do one with Singletary MVP, one with Cook at MVP, and one with Bills defense at MVP. And then I get my choice of Mixon, Davis. Maybe I want to get contrarian and leave salary on the table with just a single kicker like Evan McPherson for the Bengals. Maybe the Bengals don't score any points today. Maybe Samaje Perine, because if we think they're getting blown out, maybe Samaje Perine is going to be the QB in the game. That type of thing. I'd want to make my build specific for it.
Yeah, I think running in that final spot there, a Bengals pass catcher would fit well with your narrative here. Obviously, you're building for a Bills onslaught. They win by 3 touchdowns or something like that. So I think you want a Bengals pass catcher to fill out this lineup and finish telling the story there.
And while T. Higgins would make the most sense, if you really want to play the onslaught card, the blowout card, make that last piece Trenton Irwin or Samaje Perine. And all of a sudden, you might have the sole version of that in an entire Millie Maker type scenario. So both Cook and Singletary, as well as the Bills, I think are interesting for that type of build. If I was playing a ton of lineups, if I was running 10, I would probably have 7 or 8 of them with Burrow and Allen MVPs, and then maybe 1 or 2 with just that type of thing for just in case those lineups failed.
Makes sense.
Popping over to Discord again. It's more of a statement than a question, but I'm going to read it out anyways from our guy Doug. In general, I don't like playing a QB at captain on DK. With the PPR scoring, I would rather play him at flex and roll a QB at flex, roll a pass catcher at the captain position, and kind of hope that they'd catch more than 1 touchdown. What do you think about that one? They feel like it's a good play on DraftKings and maybe a little less important on FanDuel.
I completely agree with Doug. I prefer pass catchers in the captain on DraftKings. Josh Allen is the one guy, and other rushing quarterbacks as well, like Lamar Jackson, guys who have such a high ceiling because of their rushing ability as well. So I will have some Josh Allen in the captain because he can literally go out there and score 40 points and be a guy that you absolutely have to have. I will have 0 Joe Burrow in the captain. I just feel like Chase or Higgins or Hayden Hurst, maybe a much deeper shot. But Chase and Higgins in particular, like when Burrow is having great games, they're going off as well. So I prefer, particularly for the Bengals side of this, to put Chase and Higgins in the captain. I like Diggs and Gabe Davis in the captain, even a little Dawson Knox as well. But I will have more pass catchers than I will have Joe Burrow lineups for sure. Allen is a little bit unique because of his massive ceiling, but on the Burrow side, I completely agree with Doug.
I agree with it from a game theory perspective as well. The one thing that kind of alters it for me is will this quarterback run in for a touchdown? Now, Josh Allen, I think, is very likely to do that, but Joe Burrow also has 5 rushing touchdowns this season. And so for me, it depends on the team a lot of the time. When it's a situation like this game where I do think the quarterbacks could each throw 4 touchdowns, that is when I like to play QBs at the MVP position. Because like if they're going to throw 2, if that's kind of what I think is going to happen, 2 or 3, then I want to just get the pass catcher who will be most involved. But in a situation like this where I think they could each throw 4 or 5, where Higgins could have 2, Chase could have 2, and Burrow through 5 total kind of thing, I do want to get both of them in there. But when they're going to be the 2 highest owned captains, I definitely don't hate that game theory idea of just fading them in general as well. We got 3 minutes left to lock. Make sure your lineups are in. Make sure you don't still have the dummy lineup. I think I'm going to roll with Shakir and Knox instead of Pirine and Isaiah McKenzie. So fingers crossed. I've just been playing low dollar tournament stuff lately, not trying to break the bank. Had to do some life stuff, withdraw the play money to pay bills as opposed to gamble with it. So I've been more inclined to take some big risky tournament shots lately with the smaller dollar that I've been playing. And it's been pretty invigorating. It's really fired up the tournament mind as to like, how can I finish first in a large field contest if I'm only playing one bullet. Hayden Hurst in the captain, that'll be low owned. What do you think? Not for me, but you mentioned that you might have a couple.
Just a couple. I wouldn't do it as like even 20% of my lineups or anything like that. He just hasn't shown that big of a ceiling this year. But I mean, in this game environment, I want to be exposed to all pass catchers. So I do have 1 or 2 Hayden Hurst out of like 25.
And one more question in the YouTube before we get things going. Are you guys going 4-2 or 3-3 on your main lineup tonight on DraftKings? I very rarely look at it that way. I very rarely think of it like I want to get X amount of players from each team. I just start a lineup build of how do I think this game will unfold and then plug in the plays after that as they go. So usually that gets to more of a 4-2 or a 5-1 for me. But in a game like this, where it's going to be where it should be a high scoring game for both teams, I don't mind the idea of just running it back for 3 players per team.
Yeah, I noticed just in my build, I was getting a lot of 3-3, and I would one thing I'll do is I'll go through those, and I prefer the 4-2 side of it. So I was swapping out a lot of 3-3 into 4-2.
There you go. 3-3 is probably going to be higher owned on today's slate because I think they're just sort of easier for the optimizer to build. Good luck, all. Hopefully, we see you at the top of the standings. 1 minute to lock. Make sure you get your lineups in there. Hit the like button on the way out. Make sure you're subscribed. Hit that little notification bell so you don't miss out on any great content. I got the day off tomorrow, but we got lots of people back bringing you the goods for NBA content and getting you ready for the next week of NFL as well. You got anything for the people before we get out of here, Keith?
I'll give you a hot take. How about Dawson Knox, optimal captain?
Dawson Knox, optimal
two
captain
touchdowns
today. 2 touchdowns, one of my favorite plays on DraftKings from a salary saving standpoint, and yours as well. We're on the same page there. I'm happy I put in Knox into my FanDuel lineup based on that take. Mine today is, I think, Khalil Shakir is going to score a touchdown. So
love it.
We've reached lock. Good luck tonight, everyone. Happy New Year. We appreciate you being here as always. On behalf of myself, Keith, and our wonderful producer, Devin, behind the scenes, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you later. Peace.